Welcome to That's So Rad podcast. I'm your host, Travis Vonksness. This is a podcast about people, their passions, their life experiences, and their stories. As writer Frederick Buechner once said, the story of any one of us is in some measure the story of us all. All of us can learn something valuable from someone else's life and their stories. Join us for another conversation where we learn, laugh, and leave, seeing our own life in new ways. What's more rad than that? Welcome to another episode of That's So Rad podcast. I'm your host, Travis, flying solo today for episode I'm excited to just kind of drop in on and kind of chat about. I not entirely solo though, because I've got a sidekick on my face here, this mustache growing out, the lip curtain, as I like to call it. But yeah, I've never been a mustache guy much. But sometimes I'll just have this yearning to just have a good kind of retro trucker stash that just has a lot of credibility in the ranching and heavy equipment operator community. So it's kind of what I was feeling lately. I've never operated a forklift, but I just feel like you get a stash like this and suddenly you just have full competency in operating things like forklifts and stuff. So I should try that out. So today, on this episode, I want to talk about something I'm really passionate about, and it's people. And that's really the heartbeat of this podcast. People and their stories and their lives and learning from one another. I feel like every episode I've had with guests have been awesome in their own ways. And if you have not checked out the previous one with John Thompson, his story of surviving a farm accident is about as harrowing and wild and miraculous and just unbelievable as it gets. And so that was an intense one, but I've had a lot of great feedback on that. And again, as I always like to say, just really grateful for the people that you guys that listen to this podcast or watch it or whatever. And really, really grateful for that. And this last month, May, I think, highest downloads of all time. So really cool, and it's kind of grown more. And so yeah, like I've said, really love when you share any feedback, or especially also just leaving a rating review. That's huge to just help podcasts get more discovered. So thank you for that. Yeah, so today I just want to talk about kind of the space of disability. Really been touched personally by that in my life, and the special people that occupy that space. I was struck by a quote recently, or someone said, sometimes the people who may not say much or who face the steepest hills are the ones who anchor the rest of us to what is real. What a striking quote to think about a little bit. And it really does that really hits home for me personally in the last several years as I just think about my dad, who with his late stage dementia and just an agonizing disease, where it's just sort of, kind of a slow death, in a way, of just the death, the loss of things, the loss of function, the loss of more memory, the loss of, the identity of who they are, the identity of who we are as family members. Dementia is just a hell of a nasty, awful disease. And, but there's also these moments of, just grace and, humor and, moments that make you smile and laugh. But I think about that quote of being anchored, by people that, as it says, may not say much or face the steep hills. that really became my dad at the very end of his life, where he lost his ability to even talk, but would just sit in a room with his smile and his face and his presence that couldn't speak but spoke, I guess, in many ways, oftentimes more powerfully than words. And you kind of commune together in silence. So there's and maybe there's something too in our world right now where everything is just split second information and just over talking and everyone talk. I mean, ironically, I'm talking about that as I'm doing a podcast here, but something about being with people who, like in that case for my dad, of just where it wasn't his words that were what I was latching onto or relating to, because they weren't there. And so it became this relationship towards the end of his life of just his presence and sitting in stillness and kind of communicating through your eyes and smiles. So I really get that. I love that quote. It's profound. And yeah, there is something profound about not always having words in situations. Whether even if you have them or not, but don't use them. I mean, it's just, it's a whole thing. But, as I said, this podcast has been one that's built on sort of really just ordinary people, their lives, their stories, and us leaning in together to learn. Everything has something to teach. Everyone has something to teach in their life. And I'm just huge into, kind of being inspired, by looking at others and hearing from them. And, hopefully I've inspired people, from my life. So, we need that. We need stories, as I've said this before, but someone, a poet once said, some people need stories more than food to stay alive. And so, yep, trying to be a space of, inspiration, laughter, and stories. And, yeah, offering that is what this has been. So, before we moved down to South Carolina, for about, I want to say 7 years, I was a mental health caseworker. Crazy story of how even that my life led into that. I'm a history major prior to that. And so just twists and turns of that life in St. Louis that did lead to that. But doing case management and in the community, having clients for the first, I think, 4 years that were kids who had extreme mental illness, and then working with them and their families in the community and having goals and all that kind of stuff was amazing. And then the last 3 years of my time there was working in the adult side, where I had a caseload of adults that had severe mental illness. And so, every day consisted of going to meet with them, hang out, take them in the community, work on their goals, shopping, doing things like that. And it was just, it was incredible. I mean, the stories, the, tough things, but the laughs as well. And just the way I was inspired by watching people that are overcoming and fighting through mental illness challenges. And if, I can struggle sometimes with OCD. I know just even from that, how hard, that can sometimes be a challenge. And so people that are facing major things, bipolar and, schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder, or just severe depression, or all these types of things. I don't know, it's incredibly taxing and challenging. So to being around people that, face that kind of stuff daily, I felt like I'd show up to work and, I'm there to help them. But again, so many ways, they were inspiring me, and I was learning a lot from them too. So as I continue to go back, and more in the theme of what I'm going to talk a little bit in this episode today is on specifically people with disabilities. physical, I mean, mental health challenges can converge as well, but I'm thinking specifically that, well, I would say, yeah, physical and mental disabilities. I was in 2005. I had just faced a horrible, just personally in my life, was married, and my previous spouse had decided our marriage was done, and it was just over. And so the fallout of navigating life and being single again, and just uh, trying to even like be on my feet and just figure out how to live again and be me was in a dark fog for a long time. Very tough. And but um the I guess the first one of the first job opportunities I had coming out of that was a camp for people with disabilities in South Dakota, Sioux Falls, South Dakota. um and so I just for the summer was up there. I went to college in Northwestern in Northwest Iowa, and so I knew the area, and I really wanted to be in that area for that summer. And so like I said, I was coming out of like a dark shadow personally of just that struggle in my life. Uh, Needed a summer job. Was not like looking, like I had some long-term dream of that I had wanted to work with people with disabilities. um and nor did I really experience that. I mean, I'm trying to remember back to like who I would have known much and had relationships with before that were, and I don't know that I can hardly think of anyone. So anyway, I get this job as a camp counselor, and for probably a couple months for the summer. And it was different campers of ages all the way up to adult, through kids. And it was one of the most life-changing things in my life. As I keep saying, I'm in this like coming out of the ashes personally in my life, and I'm in this place that at one point, at one aspect, seems so foreign and just like, what am I doing? Who am I with? Who are these people? To quickly going, these people, these amazing people I get to be a counselor with for the summer, are some of the most incredibly uh, funny, um, inspiring, um, amazing people I've ever seen on the planet. And I had no experience of, all the way from things like, um, major, like probably brain injuries, to birth, disorders of where, some of the people couldn't communicate, Down syndrome, spina bifida, a whole range of different disabilities. But and then a whole range of what, and most of them being that they were campers, were able to walk on their own, and mostly take care of their own needs, and do things like swimming, do all the camp stuff. But it just was it was just unbelievable. I also did get to, I was in a rodeo, on a one-man llama rodeo show. It was a very brief show. A couple minutes, I think, lasted. And I was on the llama, and it did the death spin. Short-lived. I think it scared everybody. Probably probably wasn't the best experience for everybody, but I can say I was in a one-person llama rodeo. It was happy to get me off its back. Anyway, random. But so as I talk a little bit more about this space of inspirational people I know who've, have disabilities or physical handicaps, came across another quote by a guy who actually had spina bifida. And his line is this. He said, "I don't have a disability. I have a different ability." And I love that so much. I love that quote. And I was like, and then I read that he was a former Guinness World Record holder for the longest nonstop wheelie in a wheelchair, covering a total distance of 6.1 miles. And as part of his setting the record, he raised money for wheelchair ramps throughout his hometown in New York. So he became a huge advocate too, and I think became, someone that wrote poetry and stuff. But I'm like, oh my gosh, that is incredible. I don't have a disability. I have a different ability. And so, and I literally looked him up because I was like, I would love to have him on the podcast and talk about some of the stuff. It looks like sadly he passed away in 2022. Was a shining light of a guy. And and I think of just even the convergence of rad in this podcast of like, is there anything that is more rad than a guy doing a nonstop wheelie in a wheelchair for over 6 miles to raise money? I mean, it's like, I love, I've said this before, but the writer that talked about, rad is a smile you can wear. It's like a thought of that is like instant smile of like, that is super rad. So yeah, it's like even just a picture of like overcoming his disability in the wheelchair and doing something like wheelchairs don't do. I mean, it's kind of so I love it. So as I kind of get to the kind of as I'm reflecting on some of the stuff, and I just wanted to highlight a few people that have come from the space of disability that have just been amazing people to me and have inspired me to look back at my life. So one of them, the first one I was going to mention, was his name was Drew, and he was a summer camper. I think he was a legend at that camp. He'd probably win every year for years. And it's funny when you're a camp counselor, when you're not around all the kids or people, it's everyone shares their favorite campers and all that stuff. And Drew is one of the favorites, and you could see why. I mean, at the time, so this is like way back into like I said, 05, this is 20 years ago. At the time, he was probably close to my age, but I'm not sure. I mean, so maybe at that time he was 30s, somewhere, maybe 40s even. But anyway, and he just had this infectious laugh and smile and energy and just this zest for life. It was awesome. As the camp closed down for the summer, and he was a huge Minnesota Vikings fan. When the camp shut down for the summer, some of us would still hang out, and Drew was a special dude. I remember his mom. A couple of us went with him to get a tattoo. He had wanted to get a tattoo of the Vikings logo, known with the horns and the beard and all that. And he got that. It was a red or purple and yellow. And I kind of think I might have gotten my first tattoo ever with him when he got his. I've kind of a negative space cross. I think we got at the same time, but things are fuzzy now. But the thing about Drew that made me reflect on is I believe that for the next 2 years, and this is not exaggerating, I think the next 2 years, he called me every single day, every day. It was, I mean, I'm pretty sure it was at least a year and a half. I know it was over a year. Felt like it was 2 years, but again, fuzzy memory right now. But every single day he called me, and it was just to say hi, just to check in. It was to, how about them Vikings? It was a lot of the same questions. Um, and I'll never forget, he had so many funny quirks and funny things with his personality, but one of them was he would ask, I would laugh or something. He'd say, "Hey, Travis, who taught you to laugh like that? And, and I mean, he was genuinely serious. I mean, he literally was, who taught me to laugh like that? And you know, I mean, and because he'd ask it so often, I think I'd mix up different versions of, well, you know, I took a course, or, you know, a relative or whatever, but it was just funny, that question of who taught me to laugh like that. And I want to learn to laugh like you. And, um, it just, I think about his life, and, you know, what he taught me about friendship, and, about, you know, living with just so much joy, and, um, and dedication, you know, to being a friend. I mean, to call somebody every day, um, that's, that I was worth that to him. You know, it's easy to kind of, some days, you know, like, oh, Drew again, you know, or just you couldn't get every call. And, but, I think I took most of them because I wanted to make sure, I mean, he meant that much to me. And also just that, we wouldn't talk long, but just to like connect, and that probably made his day. So that was awesome. And then more recently in my life, well, anyway, and then so that would have lasted a while, and then, you know, Drew passed away. I think I'd heard that it was in the last, oh gosh, maybe 10 years ago, or I something. But so, um, but more recently, a friend of mine, Scott, who is just amazing. He's in the town we live in, Spartanburg, and I encountered him on, so we have kind of a public trail, uh, in town, the rail trail we call it, and, lots of joggers, and, you know, just a great multi-use trail. And then there's different areas, you know, parks and different things on it. And, one time my wife and I were out there, and, I see this guy playing, um, and, he's, you know, he's got his little setup. I think he had like, his guitar, and it, you know, it was electric guitar, but not plugged into an amp or anything. And so, you know, it's just basically his voice. And then I think he had like a radio or something. He was singing 80s songs. And the thing about it is, Scott, uh, it, it, so for a lot of people that would walk by him, I think part of because of his appearance, I'm not sure exactly what entirely, you know, what his diagnosis or what exactly his disability is. And he's probably now in his late 50s. But he, um, there would be plenty of people that were either like, maybe, you know, kind of looks to some people a little scary or not. I don't know if he's safe, that kind of thing. Or to other people, there's probably people that the way he's singing, you know, it's not perfect pitch, and it's, you know, could laugh, you know, or just like, oh, this is hilarious. Let's capture this and put it, you know, upload this to YouTube or whatever, and, you know, whatever. And so I kind of think there was a lot of people that's kind of how they would have seen him. Now, I think, there's come to see this later, which is incredibly awesome, and speaks a lot to the people around that have really embraced him, and he's a legend, and he's like people that love him. So he's also really, really well beloved. But, what happened for me in that moment was I just was watching this guy like just perform, um, without caring what I mean, just bringing this like joy to the park, and playing 80s hits I haven't heard forever, and like singing with passion. And I remember I walked over to him, and I just want to say like hi, and just thank you for playing, and just thank you for, what you're doing out here. And I offer my hand, and he says, "Hi, I'm Scott. Thanks for coming to my rock show." And he had a wristband on and stuff, and it was like, dude, okay, this is up a notch. This is something even bigger. So thought that was awesome and funny. And then struck up a friendship, and I would come out, and, um, this was actually during part of the time while my dad was still living, and, you know, we were going through just the difficulty of caring for him, and just the toll caregiving takes. And so a lot of hard, dark days, or times you're just like really despairing, just like life sucks, you know? And, um, the, I would just go, you know what I need today is I need to go hang out with Scott. Um, I was just, it was just amazing to be around. I mean, just, again, it's kind of that common thread, but his joy, his just sort of innocence, but also just his like, his going to the park, like every day his mission was, you know, he lives in a little apartment complex that I think sort of a disability community that, you know, high functioning as far as independence and stuff like that. But it would literally pack his guitar stuff up, walk over, and then go on the trail, and then just every day just play his songs. And really, in what he was doing is putting on a show. He was putting on a rock show every day in the city. No matter who's there, no matter if anyone's watching, no matter probably if people are laughing, no matter if whatever. And I was just like, dude, that's cool. Like that is like you're illuminating a place. Um you're doing something so inspiring and cool. And anyway, we just had this friendship, and um it led to hanging out, bringing them to our place, bringing them out to our place for gatherings, playing volleyball, doing stuff like that. We were part of a small church group that really embraced him, and he became part of our little church group that met up weekly. Um, and you know, you'd ask him to pray, and it was just like he would pray a prayer that just like you just have chills, like and so many people I'm struck by are the Scots living around us in our cities, in, you know, our lives, and totally marginalized, you know. We're all busy, we're, you know, but we don't stop, but we also, for whatever reasons, you know, it's just most of us don't see the Scots, and or have the time for them. And we're really missing out. We're missing out on seeing a life that uh, can be so inspiring and teach us about life, teach us about ourselves, about the ways sometimes we can maybe overly think what people think, or we are jaded, or we are, you know, there just is, you know, I'm kind of generalizing, but I think what I'm saying is in the friendships and the spaces of people I've really seen who have had disabilities that I've been in close contact with, um, there's something so powerful about their life. And that I love, back to the quote by Robert Hensel, who said, you know, I don't have a disability, I have a different ability. And I kind of think bringing this kind of full circle home is, in many cases, the different ability is a different lens to just see the world, and the ability to smile more, to laugh more, to trust more, to uh, just see others for just um, who they really are, or without all the preconceptions or assumptions, or just there's, I mean, there is something childlike, yes, in that kind of thing, but it's also like um, I think that's part of what happens is that we lose that childlikeness too, and that's not good. Like we lose that wonder and that curiosity, and some of that stuff that is what, I don't know. I just so back to with Scott. I mean, I would have days, like I said earlier, where I would just have moments where I'm like, you know what, they're the person I need the most to see today is Scott. I want to hang out with him. I want to go for a walk and just talk about life, see what he's up to, what's he jamming, what, you know, Phil Collins, Rat. I mean, who's who's he? What's he singing? And and I will say that we had a and then as I've said in this podcast a lot, like if you've listened to this, you know, talk so much about my brother Jeremy, his car accident and his brain injury, and he is, you know, by far and away for me the most inspiring and influential person in my life, and represents the disability community in that way. And but yeah, I didn't want to focus on him. I've talked so much about him, and we'll continue to do that. But I want to talk about a couple other people. But there was and we may have said this in an early episode in this podcast, but there was a birthday party for Jeremy this last November, and Scott was there. Brought him and my buddies in the band Wasper Jaws. Got to meet Scott, and Scott was dressed as Prince because why not? And so he showed up with his guitar, and the band was playing for Jeremy's birthday on a stage, and with high visibility, and it was amazing. And Scott as Prince was jamming along, and Danny said, "Scott, you play for our set," and he was up there with his guitar, and he had all the movements down exactly. You would not know he's not playing. It was incredible. The band had a blast with him, loved him. People were smiling. I mean, and so I just thought, like, even that was a moment where Scott represented, like, Scott was brought to the spotlight. He was away from the fringes, and in that moment, kind of on the stage, the spotlight. And what happened? Just smiles, so much joy, people just loving his presence. And I was just like, what a picture of the people that we forget or we overlook, and the Scots. So I guess my challenge to all of us, and to you especially out there, if you don't know somebody as a friend who has a disability or a different ability, as Robert said, that you look for those people. And you know, it could be in your church, or it could be on a trail like me. Just there he is, you know, and there's Scott, and I want to meet this guy. And lean into their life. I mean, you may find out that they may become one of the most powerful presences, or, you know, people in your life that you didn't know how much you needed, and how much they teach me, teach us about life, living, what really matters, seeing the world differently. And man, do we need that. And so, yeah, I just wanted to highlight in this episode kind of the space of disability and the amazing people that I know in my life, and have had the honor to get to know and meet, who come from having physical disabilities, and, you know, incredible challenges that they are overcoming and have overcome, and are shining beacons of light to the world. So, all right, well, there's a bit of rambling in this, but always is. So, all right, with that, hope you're having a good week wherever you are. Find yourself listening, and hope you're finding places and people that inspire you to continue to keep at it another day and keep encouraged. So thanks for hanging out with me today. Hope you enjoyed the episode today. Check out the show notes for any links or resources shared in the episode. If you enjoy the podcast, it would be really appreciated if you'd subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and share it with friends. May we all remember these words from writer Mary Oliver. Instructions for living a life. Pay attention, be astonished, tell about it.